almond flour bread. So it takes almond flour. I've already measured this out, 2 cups. Almond flour, 4 eggs, warmed up to room temperature, I'm told is the best. Some warm water. Now, some of the recipes call for flaxseed meal to be put in it, and some call for psyllium husks. So since I have both, I decided to split it between the two. So we've got our flaxseed and psyllium husks in here. And I'm just adding one other thing for a little bit of texture, which is some almond meal, not flour, but meal. It's a little coarser because I kind of like a little coarseness. And then we have a bit of salt. One of them asked for sea salt. So I'm going with the Himalayan pink salt, which is ancient sea salt, filled with all sorts of wonderful minerals. And then we're going to have what is that? A half cup of melted butter. Some call for coconut oil, 1/4 cup of that. Everyone has a slightly different mix on it. And then in order to get the thing to rise, because we don't use yeast, we're using baking powder instead. And in the process, we have to take the eggs and really beat them up so they get a lot of air into them. And that air will then bake into the bread, making those nice little air holes. And let's see, parchment paper, which we have to have for the baking tin. Now, it's been suggested that you go with about an 8-inch by 4-inch baking tin, but you have to put the parchment paper in so that you can then easily lift the finished loaf out of the tin. So parchment paper. So fingers crossed, pray for me. We'll see how this goes. So now the next step, we have to beat these eggs until they're double in volume. So we will open the eggs, beat them up until they're twice the size, which gets lots of air into them. So now we just need to beat them up until they're twice the size. Oh, looks as though we've gotten there. So now we do the dry ingredients. Now they say we mix everything all up together, but to be honest with you, I like to put any flours through a sieve because, as you can see, there are these little lumps that form with a lot of flours. In this case, I'm discovering that the almond flour seems to have more lumps than regular flour, so I'd like to have it as smooth as possible, and I'll do this in a couple stages. And there we are. It looks beautifully fine. Lovely. Okay, well, it's better than it was. So now we add the other dry ingredients. There's the flaxseed and the psyllium. See the psyllium? That's just actually what we take in the morning, the psyllium. Now that we get to our ripe old age and need a little help with our digestion. Okay, half a teaspoon of the salt. You know something, I don't like a lot of salt. I'm going to go with a 1/4 teaspoon. There we go. So I say this is the pink Himalayan salt, and they call for an entire tablespoon of, this is Rumford baking powder. Not baking soda, quite different, baking powder. You must get that absolutely right. This is what takes the place of yeast and makes this bread rise, along with the bubbles we're putting into it. There we go. From the mixing things here. Okay, our next step is just to quickly blend these things together. And now we're going to add the liquids. Now we have the wet ingredients, and we are supposed to blend the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients just being the eggs at the moment. And we're supposed to, I remind you, this is the first time I've done it, slowly into the eggs, incorporating it slowly and smoothly. I can see why they have you do it in this order. You can see that it's getting a lot more sticky in consistency, more like a dough. And then we're going to have to add the last of the wet ingredients, the melted butter and the water. Okay, and then they want you to add the melted butter, as you can see. Get that mixed in before we add the water. There must be a reason for it. I will take them at their word. They say, some of them say beat it in. I don't know if you want to beat it. I don't think my mixer would be able to beat it in, but it can certainly fold it in. And there we are. So now, here we are. We're going to line the pan. Now, none of the recipes I read say that you need to put oil or anything on the pan, but to be honest with you, since I always do, whether I ever use this or not, I think it might help this to stick to the sides and prevent any possible leak through from sticking. So the bottom of the pan is the most important. And so I'm just using a little bit of canola oil just to cover it to make sure we don't get anything sticking. Okay, there you go, see? It helps it stick to the side, just like I hope it would. Okay. So there we go. There's our pan, all fitted with its inside coat. And we will just put that aside for the moment. This is a lot stickier and wetter than most bread batters that I've used. Well, we got it this far. Now they say to shape it, shape the top of it. So I have cleaned off the spatula, sprayed it with some canola oil, a little white, and we'll see if that will help shape the top of the loaf. Well, seems to be a bit anyway. Now we're ready to take this and put it in the oven. Okay, come over here. We're all panned and ready to go, so now we just put it in the oven for approximately an hour, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more. The way you tell whether it's done is, one, is it a bit brown? Has it risen? But mainly by putting a toothpick or a skewer or something else into the loaf, pulling it out and make sure there's nothing sticking to it. If there's nothing sticking to it, it is essentially done. But if you want more of a crust on the top, you leave it in longer. So I found that about an hour and 10 minutes did that. So now it's been about an hour and 10 minutes, and we're going to see how this thing looks. Well, that looks like an actual loaf of bread. Not so bad. So now we need to let it sit here and cool for about 30 minutes at least. Apparently it needs that amount of time to kind of settle and firm itself up. If we start earlier, it would be a problem. It's cooled down nicely. Nice crust. So now our trick is going to be to lift it out, cut off the slice, and have a test. Okay, let's see. There it comes. Straight out, no problems. It's still nice and warm, so the butter will melt nicely. So, cuts beautifully. So now, the test. The taste test. Butter. Mmm. Mmm. That is delicious. It has sort of a natural sweetness to it. There's no sugar. That's great. It's not hard. It's not dry. It's very moist. That's great. I can thoroughly recommend it. Thanks for watching.